Obviously, groceries are more expensive. It hurts. It really does hurt when I have to tell my children no. When I have to tell them that, sorry, we can't go to this activity because I don't have the extra $120 to spare this month. As a mother, that's kind of like the hardest part.
What's going on, guys? JC Nita here, personal finance enthusiast, property owner, investor, and online business proprietor, back with another video. And this one is by CNBC, and it is about why the American dream became unaffordable for the middle class. I'm curious to know what your definition of the American dream is. So in the comment section, let me know what your definition of the American dream is, and do you think that it is no longer attainable for the middle class?
The middle class is typically defined as households with an annual income ranging between $53,740 and $161,220. But middle-class Americans like Kyle Connolly from Pensacola, Florida, says life has quickly grown unaffordable.
Financially, things have definitely been a struggle for me. I don't know how, but every single month I somehow manage to get by, and I'm left with, maybe this past month I was left with $125 in my checking account, and that's it.
As of June 2024, 65% of middle-class Americans said they were struggling financially and don't expect their situation to improve for the rest of their lives.
It's a part of the income distribution that has felt a lot of pain in the wake of the pandemic, and it wasn't something that just economists were tracking. It was something that was really felt on the household level. You know, people felt it in their grocery bills, people felt it at the gas pump.
In their own neighborhoods and in their own lives, they have their own expectations for what they can do, where they can go, where they can eat, where they can live. And to the degree that they're facing those pressures on an individual basis, it really is causing quite a bit of an alarm.
Okay, really quick, this man mentioned expectations. I think that's a big thing, expectations. So the American dream, what is it? So again, let me know what you think. For me, what I think the American dream for a lot of people is, it's that typical nice neighborhood, white picket fence, now probably 2-car garage. Before, maybe all this on one income. Now I think it's more people are saying, okay, we can do this on 2.5 kids, nice car in the driveway. It doesn't have to be a Rolls Royce, but something that for the both spouses to have a nice, let's say, new Toyota Camry, maybe depending on what level of middle class you're at, maybe something maybe nicer like an Acura or something like that. And the ability to take a vacation or two with your family a couple times a year, right? I think that's what the American dream is for a lot of people. And now that expectation seems like it's very hard to attain with the cost of things going up and salaries and pay not really keeping pace with it. So another thing too is, it seems like a lot of people's expectations, especially in the millennial generation like that I'm in, and maybe the Gen Z generation, is that we are watching people on social media and seeing them take these lavish trips and pamper themselves and do all these things that warps our thinking. I'm sure that maybe you are also a victim of this as well. You see these people highlight reels on Instagram. You're like, man, I want to do that. Man, I want to go to the spa every week. Man, I want to take the vacation every quarter. Man, I want to drive this nice car. Man, I want to buy all these nice clothes. Not realizing that, you know, a lot of these people are doing all this on debt. A lot of people, they're renting their cars. A lot of people, they're faking it.
5% of middle-income families say they are actively cutting back on non-essential expenses, with 73% finding it difficult to save for the future.
I have had to reduce all non-essential spending. I have gotten one haircut because it just got out of control, and that's it. That's all that I can afford.
We can do so much better. To all of you watching, we can get back to an America that's affordable again.
There's a strong role for policy in affecting the prices of all of these essential goods, from housing to childcare to healthcare expenses.
I think there's a lot of scope to have government programs that help the middle class quite a bit more.
So how has the middle class life become so unaffordable for Americans?
Housing is always going to be typically the biggest bite of a household's budget. I think that's probably a primary issue in terms of why people are feeling that crunch.
I am currently renting, and I would say that the housing is probably about 65% of my monthly expenses, where it should be the other way around. It should be 33%.
The median rent for middle-income families has risen by 18%. to $1,300 per household between 2001 and 2022.
You've just seen this intense upward pressure on the cost of rent, and that filters through to the cost of buying a house.
Existing home prices hit a record in June 2024, with existing homes selling at a median price of $426,900. According to the most recent analysis, US is facing a shortage of 4.5 million homes. In 2022, families in the US increased by 1.8 million, but only 1.4 million housing units were built to meet the demand.
They mentioned something here that's very important, and that's inventory. So after COVID, obviously, what do we have? We have higher inflation, so the prices of things were inflated during COVID, and home prices were definitely inflated. And now post-COVID, people don't want to bring their prices back down to where they were at. So you have high home prices, not to mention you have low inventory. So now you have fewer homes and they're more expensive. Add on top of that higher interest rates. So with that being said, what does that mean? That means that the biggest expense that you have and that I have, which is where we live, is now astronomical. And the add on top of that, how much we're making now has not caught up at all. Yes, salaries and payment has increased some since COVID, but not to the same degree as the cost of homes. So obviously it's putting a crunch on people, because one of the biggest factors of anyone's budget and of the American dream is that home. So now she's paying 65% of her take home, or gross, I'm not sure, she didn't say, take home probably, on her rent. Where does that leave her to pay for everything else she has to pay for? Not to mention, does she have student loans? Does she have credit card debt? Does she have childcare, which is a whole nother monster? It's crazy.
You've got lots of families who are trying to form, people leave college, they leave their parents' house, they want to buy their own house. And we just haven't seen housing construction.
If you don't build more housing, then housing becomes more expensive. And that's exactly what's happening in a lot of coastal cities and increasingly more and more cities across the United States, that it becomes very unaffordable to buy a house.
What it amounts to are state and local policies that have really operated over the course of several decades to restrict housing supply.
It's the old story that people in single-family homes in desirable neighborhoods really push back against efforts to build more housing in those neighborhoods. They complain about the parking. They complain about pressure on infrastructure.
Experts say policy intervention is essential to tackling the affordability crisis.
There's an opportunity today to
Listen, some of those people are just being unreasonable, but I'll be honest, where I'm living at right now is having a surge in new builds of homes. And parking, even around where I live at, is crazy. Like, I live in a townhouse right now, and there's 2 assigned parking spaces. And the thing about it is, there are people that live by me who have now grown kids that live with them. They have parents that might live with them, or vice versa. And so that's not enough parking for the family. And so now you have to park out on the street that's further away from the house. And now, as the families continue to grow, which I guess speaks to their 1.8 million family increase in household, now you have nowhere to park. So people are parking in miles away, literally, from the house because there's nowhere to park. That happens when you have all these new builds or these new families moving in and not enough building to support them. So that's a big thing. I get it. Also, school systems. My sister, she just had a baby. I don't have any kids yet. And she's, telling me how crowded the school systems are. And friends that I have who have kids, they're telling me how crowded the school systems are getting. And so that's another thing. So I get it when they're saying all these new people moving in, if they have all these new builds, it's going to cause pressure on the infrastructure, but we have to find some kind of balance there. New builds and not disrupting what's currently there in these single family neighborhoods.
I think how the federal government interacts with housing markets. We already see this in markets like healthcare in the United States. It's not a purely privatized market. There is a government role, both in terms of investments and also just in terms of thinking about how we organize policies.
We don't need to build public housing in the suburbs, but we do need to build more densely near the city center, allow for duplexes and triplexes, at least some amount of light touch density that allows more people to live near where their jobs are, and it brings down rents and home prices a bit, even if that's going to not be as good for existing homeowners.
So where I'm at, there's starting to be an upsurge in something called ADUs, accessory dwelling units. And what they are is pretty much, if you have land, let's say, in the back of your house or back of your property, the local government is allowing you to build essentially what you can call tiny homes or smaller homes on the back of your property to allow for more people to live on that property. It's a solution to get around these policies that prevent building in certain areas. So that's a good thing. And so maybe you have an aging parent that needs to move back in with you. Instead of having them in your main house with you, which, there might not be enough space, if you have enough land for it, you can build this ADU and have them move in there. Or you can even use it for Airbnb. There's a lot of different things you can do with it. So I think that's a good solution that more and more people will probably start to use.
We see childcare costs that have also exploded over the years. In some parts of the country, you have households paying upwards of $25,000 per year.
Yeah.
The cost of childcare has risen at more than twice the rate of inflation in the U.S., increasing by 273% between 1990 and 2024.
We expect these families to go and participate in the labor market, but they need this vital support.
We have a system in the U.S. that is just so much you're on your own, unless you're very, very poor and can get a subsidy.
I'm very fortunate that what I do to earn an income does not require me to have childcare. I would basically be making the equivalent of $7.50 an hour over the summer if I had to pay for full-time childcare for 3 children. It doesn't make sense.
In 2023, 67% of parents reported spending at least 20% of their annual income on childcare, while 89% said they spent 10% or more of their household income on childcare.
Really quick, like I said, my sister just had a kid and she was debating how, I don't put her business all out there, but, and this is not just her too. I know people personally, and I've heard stories as well, anecdotally as well, about people who have literally wanted more children but decided not to just because of the cost of childcare. The cost of childcare is more than their car note, sometimes more than their rent. More than their rent. We're talking about not having a child, bringing life into the world because they can't afford to do it. And it's a catch-22 because the government's going to subsidize those people who just are really, really poor so they can have a bunch of kids, which happens a lot of times. And so the people who are really rich can afford to have kids, obviously, but those people in the quote-unquote middle class, stuffed in the middle, is getting increasingly difficult to be able to support a bigger family. Now, is that good or bad? I don't know, but it's just a reality.
We see here is really a marketplace that's still in a bit of disarray. We have shortages in childcare centers. We have childcare workers who really report being underpaid, which then exacerbates the problem.
You sometimes have states or localities insisting on regulations that just don't make sense for childcare, that make onerous restrictions on child-to-staff ratios or certain zoning restrictions on where you can have a childcare facility.
And so again, here, there is an opportunity to prop up this labor market and this overall marketplace. We saw some of this effort taking place during the pandemic. In 2021, the United States embarked upon a historic expansion in the refundable child tax credit.
Expanded not just in its generosity, but also in the number of families it reached. It went deep into the middle class. Like often the child tax credit in previous years has just really been a low-income program. This one really spread out, didn't start phasing out until $100,000 or more for a bunch of families.
That was a one-year experiment that expired. You've had policymakers advocating for making this 2021 expanded child tax credit permanent, but it has faced resistance in the Congress.
Listen, I'm not really for big government, but I will say this. I pay taxes. I'm sure you pay taxes. And I'm sure you probably think, like a lot of people think, where are my tax dollars going? Are they going to the best use that they can go to? Is the government wasting my tax dollars, yes or no? So while I may not be for big government, I don't know. I haven't thought about it deeply enough yet. Let me know what you think in the comments, but I'm not mad if some of my tax dollars goes to helping a mother who has 3 kids pay for childcare. Or a father that has 3 kids pay for childcare, or a family with 3 kids or 5 kids or however many pay for childcare. It's a good use of my tax dollars, I think. Right? I don't think you should struggle as a family because, you can't go to work because you have kids to take care of. And so now you have to decide between, do I go to work and earn $50,000 a year, or do I stay home and raise these kids and live off one income because paying for childcare while I go to work is break even or I'm making less. I don't know. It just seems to me like it's something that maybe in this particular situation, having more government programs and incentives is a good thing. But let me know what you think in the comments.
Healthcare is another major factor making the middle-class lifestyle unaffordable for many American families. In 2021, about 12.4 million middle-class families had unpaid medical bills, the highest among all other income groups.
Healthcare expenses weigh heavily on me because I don't have health insurance personally. My children do, but I don't. Every time I sit down to go ahead and look for a health plan that would make sense, I get discouraged because what I can afford has like a $15,000 deductible, but I'm giving them $600 a month.
It's pretty well known by now that if you compare the US to almost any other advanced country, we spend a ton more on healthcare, and we do not get better health outcomes.
The US spends about $12,742 per person on healthcare, the highest cost per capita compared to other wealthy OECD countries. However, the country still ranks lower on key health measures like life expectancy and infant mortality when compared to similar nations.
Everything costs more. Doctors cost more, drugs cost more, devices cost more. And that to me just seems to be a clear problem of market power in the healthcare sector. And so you've got pharmaceutical companies that unambiguously have market power. That's what patents are. And unlike other countries that really try to leverage some kind of monopsony power against pharmaceutical companies to sort of countervail their monopoly power, we don't do that much in the US. Besides drugs, you've got growing consolidation in sort of hospitals and specialty providers.
Okay, listen, there's a little bit of controversial take here, but here's the thing. Do I think that these pharmaceutical companies are essentially rackets or essentially way overcharging for prescription drugs and it needs to be some reform there? I think that there may need to be. Again, hot topic, hot take, I get it. I'd have to do more research. I'll leave it at that. But what I also say is, I know in the US, for us, a lot of the things that we struggle with health-wise can be fixed with lifestyle changes. And so I think that out of all the three they mentioned so far, the cost of housing, the childcare issues, and now the healthcare costs, I think the one that me and you can have the biggest impact on just as individuals is the healthcare part of it. If we can eat healthier, get better sleep, exercise more, find ways to reduce stress, however that looks to you, I think that we can significantly reduce our healthcare costs. And I think that's huge because we have power and autonomy there way more than we do in how expensive houses are because of lack of inventory or how expensive childcare is. So that's just my 2 cents. Obviously take it with a grain of salt. I'm some guy on YouTube. Let me know what you think. Okay, here we go. Oh, politics.
Prices are also rising for essential expenses other than the big three.
The utilities that are just slowly increasing. It's like every month, it's like my usage is down, but why is my bill higher? Obviously, groceries are more expensive. It hurts. It really does hurt when I have to tell my children no. When I have to tell them that, sorry, we can't go to this activity because I don't have the extra $120 to spare this month. As a mother, that's kind of like the hardest part.
Real quick, so I told you I own a couple, anyway, you know that already. So I have a situation where my water bill went from $80 a month on average to about $120 a month on average. And this has been a 3-month trend. And I thought someone was just taking 2-hour-long showers like it was no big deal. Maybe that's the case. But come to find out, I have to look into my usage details. But I think it's because of an increase in the cost per for using that water. What is that, 80 to 120? That's $40. That's, what is that, like a 33, 40% increase? They touched on the big ones. They touched on the cost of homes or housing, rent, mortgage. They touched on childcare. That's huge. They touched on healthcare. Something they didn't touch on is the cost of transportation. That's huge as well. The cost, if you live in a major city, to get to and from work on the subway or on the MARC train or whatever it's called where you're at, that's big too. Or the cost of cars has gone way up as well. Again, that's a little bit more within our control than some of these things because you can go buy used. Obviously, I know that at a point, used cars are more expensive than new cars, and that's changed a bit and leveled out. So they touched on all the big stuff. So like I said, let me know what you think the American dream is. What is your definition of the American dream? Let me know in the comment section. Let me know if you think it's unattainable. Let me know if you think that, you know, how you feel about this. I'm curious to know. With that said, if you made it this far, I really, really appreciate you. I appreciate you so much. If you don't mind giving me a like, it's very helpful for the YouTube algorithm. And if you feel so inclined to subscribe, it would mean a lot to me as well. If you got any entertainment at all, any value from the video. And with that, till next time, everyone, make smart financial decisions.